Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from our IT Visualizer channel. We continue our lab, the Matrix Lab, the video number 19. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been still working on uh, and analyzing and discovering the DCDIAG tool, which is a very important tool to analyze the health and to troubleshoot problems concerning the Active Directory and the domain controllers. We have seen that there is about 21 tests that will be run through this tool, and every test will check a certain aspect of the Active Directory or aspect of the domain controller. We have run a certain command which will run these tests, and the result will be saved to a text file. We have seen in the previous videos how we can use this command, and we describe this command and explain it in different terms uh, and different ways by asking the different AI tools like Claude 3, like ChatGPT 4o, like Gemini. We have seen that using special words or special terms when asking the AI will give different results, which can be very easy and can be very complex. So we have seen this. We have seen how we can communicate with the AI tools to help us to explain the code or the script that we are using or the commands that we are using. So today what we need to do, we need to continue discussing the DCDIAG tool. We have seen before, if you all are following my videos, we have worked with this was the command that we have issued on one of our domain controllers to run the DCDIAG tool on all of the domains in the site, domain controllers in the site, and it will be saved to a file, a text file that contains data related to the DCDIAG tests. We have seen we have 21 tests. Today we'll begin discussing some of these tests, but we have used this command and we have asked the AI tools to explain it in different ways. And we have seen that we have already made a scheduled task to run this command on one of our servers daily, every day. So we have a report, and this report we can analyze later and see if our domain controllers and Active Directory is in complete health or it's working perfectly. So today what we need to do, we need to further deep dive in the tests that will be done using the DCDIAG tool. We will see here there is a lot of tests that will be done. We can begin with the advertising or the first type of tests which called advertising. We will discuss what this test will do, but before that we need to I will show you all. First we will discuss what is advertising, and we will see the result of the advertising test and what it does exactly. Okay, so for example, if we go and see the advertising test, if you go there, first of all, this is how the test will appear. You will see that this is the site or the Active Directory site, and this is the name of the first domain controller in the site, and then we will see a couple of data displayed in front of us. It's saying that now this domain controller is advertising itself as so and so and so. What we mean by advertising here, the advertising test is making sure that every domain controller is doing certain jobs in the domain. So we need to make sure that these jobs are done by the domain controllers. For example, this is the primary domain controller. It should act as a time server, and it should act as a global catalog server, and it should act as a key distribution center server. And we should have, or it should have, a writable directory or a writable database, Active Directory database, and it should be act as a LDAP server. Okay, and it should act as a domain controller, of course. And we will see, if I ask the AI tools to verify this or to explain these test results, we can see here, for example, that the primary domain controller has passed the advertising test. First of all, if you go and see what the AI said concerning these tests, so I asked it to explain these lines in layman terms. Let's see what was the answer of ChatGPT 4. So the first thing, or the first test that will be done using the DCDIAG tool is the advertising test. Let's see what is the answer of ChatGPT 4o.
Sure, I'll explain these lines in simple terms. 1. Testing server. Default first site name DCSM0125. This means the test is being conducted on a server named DCSM0125, which is located in a site called default first site name. 2. Starting test. Advertising. This indicates that the test is checking what services the server DCS0125 is announcing or advertising to the network. 3. The DC DCSM0125 is advertising itself as a DC and having a DS. The server DCSM0125 is telling the network that it is a domain controller, DC, and has a directory service, DS, which is a database that stores user, computer, and other information. 4. The DC DCSM0125 is advertising as an LDAP server. The server is announcing that it can use LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, which is a way to access and manage the directory information. 5. The DC DCSM0125 is advertising as having a writable directory. The server is indicating that its directory, the database of user and computer information, can be written to, meaning it can accept updates and changes. 6. The DC DCSM0125 is advertising as a key distribution center. The server is announcing that it can act as a key distribution center, KDC, which is part of the Kerberos authentication system. It helps manage encryption keys for secure communication. 7. The DC DCSM0125 is advertising as a time server. The server is indicating that it can provide time synchronization services to other devices on the network, ensuring that all devices have the correct time. 8. The DS DCSM0125 is advertising as a GC. The server is advertising that it is a global catalog GC server, which means it holds a searchable, partial replica of every object in the directory for the entire forest, allowing for quick searches across the entire network. In short, this server DCSM0125 is telling the network about all the roles and services it can perform, ensuring other devices and servers know how they can interact with it.
So this is very, very critical services. If they are not running, it will do a lot of problems in our domain. So just wait for a moment, guys. So let's continue, guys. Here we can see that these are very important services that every domain controller should hold. If one of these services are not working, it will do a lot of or a lot of problems will arise. So let's ask the ChatGPT 4o what will happen if one of these services are not running. Explain using real world examples in the context of Active Directory domain. So as we can see here, there is a lot of impacts that will be done. Let's see what was the answer of chat GPT 4o. But here, as we can see, this will lead to a lot of problems. Let's see what should or what could be the cause or what could be the impact.
If one of these services is not running on a domain controller, DC, in the context of an Active Directory AD domain, it can lead to various issues within the network. Here are the potential problems for each service, explained using real-world examples. 1. Domain controller DC and directory service. Example: if the DC service is not running, users might not be able to log into their computers or access network resources. Impact: centralized management of user accounts and security policies would be disrupted, leading to authentication failures and potential security risks. 2. LDAP server. Example: If the LDAP service is not available, applications that rely on querying user information, like email clients or HR systems, won't be able to fetch or validate user data. Impact. This can cause delays or failures in applications that need to look up user details or validate user credentials against the directory. 3. Writable directory. Example. If the directory is not writable, administrators won't be able to create or modify user accounts, passwords, or other directory objects. Impact. Changes to user permissions, group memberships, or updates to user information would be blocked, causing administrative overhead and potential security issues. 4. Key Distribution Center, KD example. If the KDC service is not running, Kerberos authentication will fail. Users might see login failed messages or be unable to access secure resources. Impact. This can cause widespread login issues and access problems to network services that rely on Kerberos for authentication, such as file shares or intranet sites. Time server. Example, if the time server service is not available, computers on the network might have incorrect system times. Impact. Time discrepancies can lead to authentication failures. Kerberos requires synchronized time and issues with timestamped data, causing problems in logging, auditing, and scheduled tasks. 6. Global Catalog GC. Example. If the GC service is not running, users might face delays or failures when searching for objects in the AD forest, such as finding contacts in a large organization. Impact. This can slow down the performance of applications that need to look up directory information across domains and can impact cross-domain authentication and resource access. In summary, each of these services plays a crucial role in ensuring the smooth operation of an Active Directory domain. If any of these services are not running, it can lead to significant disruptions in user authentication, access to resources, directory management, and overall network functionality.
Yes, you can see here that these services are very, very critical. Each one of these has an important role in the domain. The time server, the global catalog server, the KDC, the LDAP server, the domain controller. So everything or every one of these services is very, very important. So the advertising test is very, very important. You need to pass all of these tests successfully. If one of these is not working, then you should go see the AI. It's telling you what could be the cause or what could be the impact of not working or this service is not working properly. This will be the signs. We will see these signs in your network. If you see any one of these signs in the network, then this service is not advertised in your domain controller in your location. Okay, so this is a one good thing. Let's begin seeing this test one by one, but before that, we have already discussed this first test. Let's see, we need to discuss the tests one by one and also to discuss a very important aspect or very important thing. We need to know how the database of the Active Directory is divided or how it is partitioned or how the database is created. What are the components of the Active Directory database? Why is this? Because one of the most common problems in any Active Directory domain is the replication problems. Okay, we have discussed in the previous video, if there is any replication problem between the domain controllers and the Active Directory databases between the domain controllers, if there is a replication issue, a lot of problems will arise, and we have seen in the previous video what could be some of these problems related to the replication. So we need to go deep or to deep dive in the replication process. We need to know what parts of the database are replicated. For example, the parts of the database replicated, are they forest-wide replication or it is domain-wide replication? We need to see and discuss every part of the Active Directory database. So if a replication problem happened, we need to verify which part of the Active Directory database was not replicated. And depending upon the part that was not replicated, we will know the errors or issues that will encounter us. So as we can see here, for example, this is the slide saying the database is divided into 4 parts. We can see domain partition, or known as domain naming context or DNS. This partition contains all objects such as users, groups, and computers. Then we can see the second part is the configuration partition, also known as configuration naming context or CNC. This partition holds information about the physical structure of the forests, okay? The structure of the whole forest. Schema partition, known as schema naming context or SNC. This partition contains the schema for the forest. The schema is a set of rules, okay? Or we can see it in simple terms. Schema, it is like what are the properties of each Active Directory object. So for example, when I create a user, what are the fields I should fill when I'm creating a user? For example, I need to put the email, I need to put the username, I need to put the password, I need to put the company, I need to put the division. A lot of things should be added to the user or to be filled when we are creating a user. Who defined this? It is the schema partition. When you are creating a computer, you should define a name, you should define location. All of this is defined by the schema. So the schema, it is the properties of each object in the Active Directory. What are the properties of each object in the Active Directory? Then we can see the application partition. This is an optional partition that can be created by applications to store application specific data, especially if it is linked to the Active Directory. For example, if you have an Exchange server, it will be linked to your Active Directory users. So the data related to the Exchange will be saved to the application partition in the Active Directory database. Let's see and ask the AI tools to explain furthermore the Active Directory partitions. Let's see if we can tweak it and let it explain it in a more simple terms. So first, I have taken a screenshot of the or let's, I think here I have the Active Directory database. Let's go here. I have uh, taken a snapshot or take a screenshot of the Active Directory. Let's go, I think here, just wait for a moment. So we can take here you go, yes, here it is. We can take this screenshot and ask to explain the content of the screenshot, okay, in layman's terms. So let's see what will be what will be the answer of ChatGPT 4o. Okay, we will see here. This is the answer of ChatGPT 4o. Let's read the answer and see if it will add to the simple answer provided by Mr. Lo van der Poel.
Sure, I'll explain the content of the screenshot in simple terms. Active Directory AD partitions, also known as naming contexts. Active Directory AD is like a big directory or phone book that helps manage and organize all the information in a network, like users, computers, and resources. This directory is divided into different sections called partitions, each with a specific purpose. 1. Domain partition, or domain naming context, DNC. Think of this as the main section of the directory that contains all the important information, like the names and details of all the users, groups, and computers. It's the part that most people interact with daily. 2. Configuration partition, or configuration naming context, CNC. This section holds information about the structure of the entire directory, like the layout of the network, which servers are responsible for what, and how everything is connected. It's like the blueprint of the network. 3. Schema partition, or schema naming context, SNC. The schema is like a rule book that defines what kind of information can be stored in the directory and how it should be organized. This partition contains all these rules and definitions, ensuring that the directory data is consistent and follows the set guidelines. 4. Application partition. This is an optional section that can be created by applications to store their own specific data. It's like a special area where certain programs can keep their information separate from the rest of the directory. In the diagram next to the text, you see a representation of these partitions stacked on top of each other inside a cylinder, symbolizing how they all fit together within the Active Directory structure. Each partition has its own role, but they all work together to keep the directory organized and functional.
So this is very also a good answer. Let ask it to explain, but using question and answer format. So we need to get more from the AI. For example, I need to tell it in Q&A format to see if we can get more answers. Okay, Q and A, or to get more answers from it, Q&A format. Okay, I think it didn't give us more. A very, very simple answer. AD partitions are known. What are the active directory partitions also known as? AD partitions known as naming context. So if I'm saying AD partitions, or I can say AD naming context. What is a domain partition? Contains all objects, so and so. The configuration holds about the physical structure. Okay, didn't give us much. So let's ask the third question to explain it using real world scenarios. So ask it or to explain it using, so we can get it more better. Real dash world scenarios. Okay, let's see it. Real world scenarios in the context of active directory domain. Okay, let's see this. We can see here that the answer give us a little bit uh, of a view what will be the real world scenario. So for example, here he is saying that what is a domain partition. You will see here in a real world scenario, when an employee logs into their computer or access shared network resources, the system checks the domain partition to verify their credentials and permissions. Okay, this is a good answer. Let me read it out for you loudly, just to make it more, to explain it more.
Sure. Let's explain the content of the screenshot using real-world scenarios within the context of an Active Directory AD domain. Q. What is a domain partition, or domain naming context, DNC? A. Imagine your company's employee directory. The domain partition is like the main part of this directory where you find all the employees' details, names, departments, phone numbers, and email addresses. If you need to look up a colleague's contact information or change your password, this is the part of the directory you interact with. Real-world scenario. When an employee logs into their computer or accesses shared network resources, the system checks the domain partition to verify their credentials and permissions. Q. What is the configuration partition, or configuration naming context, CNC? A. Think of the configuration partition as the blueprint of your company's office building. It contains details about how the offices are organized, which rooms are for which departments, and the layout of the building. Similarly, the configuration partition holds information about the layout and structure of the network, including which servers perform specific roles and how they are connected. Real-world scenario. When setting up a new server or making network changes, IT administrators refer to the configuration partition to ensure everything fits correctly within the existing network structure. Q. What is the schema partition or schema naming context? SNC. A. The schema partition is like the rulebook for your company's directory. It defines what kind of information can be included in the employee directory and how it should be formatted. For example, it specifies that each employee must have a unique ID, a name, a department, and a contact number. Real-world scenario. When a new type of data needs to be added to the directory, such as a new field for employees' emergency contact information, IT administrators update the schema partition to include this new data type. What is the application partition? The application partition is an optional area where specific applications can store their own data. Imagine a separate filing cabinet in your office where a particular department keeps its documents and information separate from the main employee directory. Real-world scenario. If your company uses a specialized application for managing conference room bookings, this application might store its data in the application partition, keeping it separate from the main employee and network information. Q. What does the diagram in the screenshot illustrate? The diagram shows how these different partitions, schema, configuration, domain, and application, are organized within the Active Directory structure. Each partition has a specific role and stores different types of information, but together they ensure the directory operates smoothly and efficiently. Real-world scenario. Visualizing these partitions helps IT professionals understand how data is organized and managed within Active Directory, ensuring they can troubleshoot issues and make informed decisions when configuring or updating the network.
So the question that will arise, what will happen if one of these partitions are not replicated to the other domain controllers? So every domain controller has an Active Directory database. What if one of these partitions are not replicated correctly? So let's ask this question. What will happen if one of these AD partitions are not replicated to other domain controllers, so other DCs? Explain using real world scenarios in the context of Active Directory domain. So we can see now that we are deep analyzing what will happen if one of these are not replicated correctly. So we can see it's giving us, I think, a very, very good answer. Let's see what will happen. So I think the answer will be very, very good. Let's see the answer and read it loudly.
If one of these Active Directory partitions is not replicated to other domain controllers, DCs, it can lead to various issues within the network. Here are the potential problems for each partition, explained using real-world scenarios. #1, Domain Partition, Domain Naming Context, DNC. Scenario. Your company has multiple offices, each with its own local IT support. An employee, Alice, is transferred from the New York office to the London office. Issue if not replicated. If the domain partition is not replicated, the DCs in London won't have Alice's updated information. When she tries to log in at the London office, the system won't recognize her credentials because her user account changes haven't been propagated. Impact. Alice might be unable to access her email, network files, or any services that require authentication. This leads to frustration and delays in her ability to start working in the new office. #2, Configuration Partition, Configuration Naming Context, CNC. Your company decides to restructure the network, adding a new server and reconfiguring existing ones. The IT team makes changes to the configuration in the New York office. Issue if not replicated. If the configuration partition is not replicated, DCs in other offices won't know about the new server or the changes made. When users in London try to access resources or services that depend on this configuration, they might face errors or failed connections. Impact. There could be significant disruptions in network services, causing downtime and affecting productivity as users and applications try to connect to non-existent or incorrectly configured resources. 3. Schema partition. Schema naming context, SNC. Scenario. The IT department updates the schema to include new attributes for user accounts, like a new field for multi-factor authentication tokens. Issue if not replicated. If the schema partition is not replicated, DCs in other locations won't recognize these new attributes. Any applications or services relying on these attributes will fail or behave unpredictably when accessed from locations where the schema update hasn't propagated. Impact. This can lead to inconsistent user experiences, errors in applications that require the new schema attributes, and potentially security vulnerabilities if multi-factor authentication fails. Now 4. Application partition. Scenario. Your company uses an application for managing conference room bookings. The application writes its data to the application partition. Issue if not replicated. If the application partition is not replicated, employees in different offices will see different availability and booking information. For example, an employee in New York might book a room that appears available but is already booked by someone in London. Impact. This leads to confusion and scheduling conflicts, reducing efficiency and potentially causing missed meetings or double bookings. Summary. Replication issues, domain partition, authentication and access issues, configuration partition, service disruptions and connectivity problems, schema partition, inconsistent data and application errors, application partition, confusion and conflicts in application-specific data. Ensuring that all AD partitions are replicated across all DCs is crucial for maintaining a consistent, reliable, and efficient network environment. Failure to do so can cause significant operational challenges and disrupt the daily activities of users and applications within the organization.
Very, very good answer. I think this clarifies what will happen if one of these partitions are not replicated correctly. And we have seen or discussed the advertising test. So we are now beginning to understand the different or the usefulness of using the DCDIAG tool. It will help us to resolve a lot of problems. As you can see here, there is a lot of signs that we have known now. For example, if we have authentication and access issues, this could be a replication of the domain partition is not correctly in one of our locations. So here, this is the usefulness of the DCDIAG tool. It will analyze these problems and give you a report. So this is one thing to know. But before that, I need all you to see, for example, here I have made a DCDIAG tool report. Okay, I have got, remember from the last video, I think I have said that I have the DCDIAG, I have a report generated from the DCDIAG, and I asked Claude to analyze it, and he gave me a couple of things saying that there is a lot of errors related to the replication. Some services are stopped, and some crashes, and some authentication issues. This is, I used the Claude 3 to analyze the report here, but one good thing that you can tweak this output. So for example, here is the DCDIAG tool. This is a very simple prompt. Analyze this DCDIAG report, represent in a readable professional format, and if there is any errors, list them and the steps to solve it. So this was the answer of Claude, but uh, I have discovered a prompt that will give me a more organized output, and this will help us also analyze the problems related to the DCDIAG report. So for example, here I asked the uh, Rika AI, I need a prompt to provide the AI tools to analyze logs and narrate them to me in the form of an event with timeline, just like telling a story of a crime with clues and evidence, but of course in IT style. So here, let me show you all what was his answer. And when I tried to take this prompt and ask Google Gemini Pro 1.5 or 1.5 Pro, let's see how was an amazing answer. Let's see first, what is the answer of Rika? Let's wait for a moment.
Prompt for AI log analysis and narrative generation. Analyze the following IT system logs from start time to end time. Your task is to construct a chronological narrative of the events that occurred during this period, treating each significant log entry as a clue in the story. Your narrative should identify key events, highlight major events such as system startups/shutdowns, significant file changes, user logins/logouts, and any error messages. Analyze relationships. Connect related events to show cause and effect or chronological order. For example, note if a series of errors followed a particular user login. Detect anomalies. Point out any unusual activity that deviates from normal system behavior, such as unexpected file access at odd hours or failed login attempts from unknown IP addresses. Construct a timeline. Present the events in a clear, chronological timeline, making it easy to follow the sequence of actions. Summarize findings. Conclude with a summary of any potential issues or security concerns identified in the log analysis. Please format your narrative in a clear, readable style, similar to a detective report, where each piece of evidence is presented and then linked to build a comprehensive understanding of the events that transpired.
So let me show you the answer of Gemini when I asked this question. Here I asked it, the questions we're saying here, summary. This report analyzed the IT system logs provided, outlining a chronological narrative of the events. Chronological here means by time, every event in front of it, the timestamp. So let's see, related to Active Directory server diagnostic, the investigation highlights replication problems between domain controllers. So here you have discovered some replication problems, potential service failures, and numerous authentication errors. So this is the timeline. If we go further, one by one, here we see the error contains events happening on 12 2 2024 10:37 a.m. We can see here this is the additional domain controller logs an error in the DFS replication event log. The error indicates a failure to access configuration information uh, from the domain controller. Okay, experience another error at 39:38, again stating that it cannot communicate with this. So I think uh, this is related to DC, or the primary domain controller cannot communicate with the DC or the additional domain controller for the domain system volume replication. So this is the domain partition, it is not replicated, I think. The reported error is there are no endpoints available from the endpoint mapper. Anyway, we can see here it is arranged in time, and every code of error, this is all in uh, uh, I think this is 02. Okay, this is at January, February, 12th of February. All of these events happened in February 12, and then we have February 13. We can see a lot of errors. Okay, it's all arranged in a very, very good order in time. We can see very, very simple and organized output. Okay, we can see all of these errors and explanation. For example, this one indicating a corporate authentication error suggesting a net login service issue. Okay, let's see at the end what it will do. Here we can see all of these errors are all arranged. If you see the original output, it's not organized like this one. Let's see what will be the suggestions, or what will be the analyze for this. Here is the analyzation. See that the log reveals several concerning issues that require immediate attention. Replication problems. The logs show a recurring pattern of communication failures between the two domain controllers. This happens because there is an hang or a system hang issue. Remember that I've said that the Windows Server vNext 2025 operating system hangs a lot because it is a canary edition. So there is a lot of hanging issues that have affected the replication. This indicates potential network connectivity problems. Again, not only the hanging issue of the operating system, but the limited hardware resources. Remember that every server have only 2 gigabyte of RAM. Okay, and remember this is the operating system Windows Server vNext 2025 is a heavy eating resource system. It's like Windows 11. It needs a lot of resources. So if we have enough resources, I think replication issues will not happen, and if it didn't have any hanging issues, it will this issue will not appear. Okay, authentication failures. The repeated corporate authentication errors point to the problem with the net login service on both servers. So this is a very critical service. If it's not working, the authentication or users will not be able to log in or to authenticate to the domain. This could due to a service failure, improper configuration, or network issues connectivity. Again, network connectivity issues. Service failures. There are a lot of highlighted number of failures on both servers, including a service called LUAV or LUAVF, IS or intermediate service. This is related to uh, replication between sites. I don't have sites in my Active Directory, and WinRM, this is related to Windows Remote Management Service. These failures are likely linked to overall instability of the server. So he is suspecting that these failures appear to be because the instability of the servers or the hanging issue. System instability, the server reboots and crash dump. This is related to the crash dump failures also indicate potential hardware or software issue. So here he is have deducted that there is instability in the system, okay, because of the a lot of reboots. I have done a lot of reboots, so this is also one of the good things. Here we can see DNS issues. Several DNS issues timeouts indicate potential problems with DNS service, which could affect the overall health of the Active Directory. Again, I think this is related to the limited hardware that I have assigned to every virtual machine acting as a domain controller. Virtualization issues. These errors related to virtualization-based security and hypervisor launch failure on DC so and so indicate potential hardware or virtualization configuration problems. I think this is related to maybe Hyper-V or sorry, related to VMware virtualization. Recommendation. Here is saying what is the recommendation. Thoroughly investigate network connectivity between the two domain controllers, focusing or resolving reported RPC server unavailability or RPC server unavailability. This is a protocol to transfer data between the domain controllers. When it is down, this means there is a problem with the communication or the network connectivity. And endpoint mapper errors, service troubleshooting, identify and address the root causes behind the reported service failures, review configuration, update software if necessary. Okay, good. System instability, you need to address the crash dump, so you need to see the logs of the crash and see what are why there is a crash and unexpected reboots. Authentication issues, investigate the reported corporate authentication errors, especially those related to the net login service. Check the service configuration, log files, and again, so I think most of these errors because of the instability of the virtual machines due to the limited hardware and the crash or the continuous crash of the preview edition of Microsoft operating system. So you can see there is a conclusion. The Active Directory server diagnostic report has identified significant issues that require immediate attention. Okay, so very, very good report. And then I asked it to arrange all of the errors. Here is the server that the error appeared on, the event ID, the time it occurred, and the description. If you need to go or to ask the AI tool to analyze each event one by one or to have uh, them displayed in a table. So this is very, very good one. So we can see here that the DCDIAG tool is very, very important tool to analyze problems, and we can use the output of these tools to ask AI tools to analyze it and give us steps to solve. So let's go and see what Mr. Lovandelpoor has to say about that. Now he is discussing the different things. Here we can see, for example, this is the advertising test. Okay, checks to ensure the domain controller is currently. We have seen this advertising status. Ensure the domain controller is advertising is availability and services to the clients. We have seen the advertising services. Okay, we can see the net login service. Advertising heavily relies on net login service. So if the net login service is not working, the advertising will fail because it is responsible for advertising the different services that every domain controller have. So for example, if the net login service is not working, the domain controller will not be able to advertise its services. So this is very, very important. Advertising heavily on the net login service on each domain controller is responsible for creating the necessary SRV records. So how we know that the domain controller is a time server or it is an LDAP server it will go to the DNS and see if there is a record for this service in the DNS. So the DC will advertise itself as a LDAP server through making a record in the DNS. So the client, if he needs to know who is the LDAP server, it will go to the DNS and see if there is a record for this service for this domain controller. And this will be done, or this record will be done in DNS using the net login service. So this is very, very important service. Not only it is related or it's not working, no one will be able to log into the domain, but also if it's not working, the DC will not be able to advertise its services, and also even if its services are available, if it is not recorded in the DNS, no one will know it have these services. So basically the advertising depend heavily on the DNS records. Okay, so let me do a little bit of thing here. Let me get this this data and ask the AI to summarize it and give it in a simple explanation. So again, what the advertising test will do, the advertising test should make sure that all DCs has different services available for the clients in the network, and these services are advertised, okay, by using the net login service. So the net login service is responsible for advertising these services, and how it will advertise this service by creating records in the DNS. So if I need to know if a certain domain controller is a time server or, for example, LDAP server, I need to go to the DNS records and see if this service is related to this server. Let me first get this. This is in his notes. If I go to his notes, let me go and open the PDF, and then if we go there and get the notes, if we go there and see, here we go, this is let me get where it is. Okay, okay, if we go further, the advertising test. So let me get this one, just a moment. So copy, and then let's see if we ask ChatGPT explain this text in layman's terms. This is related to the advertising test, so let's see it will be able to give it in a simple way. Very, very good. Now he is accumulating the previous answers and giving us a more correct answer. Let's see how he has explained what was in Mr. Low van der Voort text, or what in his notes.
Sure, here's a simplified explanation of the text. Hash, what is the advertising test? The advertising test is a check performed by a tool called DCDIAG. This tool helps to ensure that domain controllers, DCs, in an Active Directory AD network are working correctly. The test makes sure that each DC is properly announcing itself to the network so that it can perform its duties, such as helping users log in and keeping the directory updated. What does the test check? 1. Advertising status. It verifies that the domain controller is telling the network that it is available and ready to provide its services. This includes things like authenticating users, letting them log in, and updating directory information. 2. NetLogon service. The test ensures that a specific service called NetLogon is running on the domain controller. NetLogon helps the DC create necessary entries in the network's phone book, DNS, so that clients can find and use the DC services. 3. DNS service records. It checks if there are correct entries in the DNS, which is like the network's directory of services. These entries help clients find the domain controller and include things like LDAP, directory services, Kerberos, authentication services, and Global Catalog, a searchable directory of all objects in the AD. 4. Event log errors. The test looks at the system event log on the domain controller to see if there are any recent errors related to NetLogon or service advertising. These errors could indicate potential problems. What happens if the test fails? If the advertising test fails, it could mean there are problems such as incorrect DNS configuration. The entries in the network's phone book might be wrong. NetLogon service failures. The service responsible for creating necessary entries might not be working properly. Connectivity issues. There could be problems with the network connections. Impact of failure. If the test fails, clients, like user computers, might not be able to find the domain controller or use its services. This can cause issues with network operations and prevent users from logging in or accessing network resources. In simple terms, the advertising test is like a checkup to make sure the domain controllers are loudly and clearly saying, "I'm here and ready to help," to the network. If they aren't, it can cause problems for everyone trying to use the network.
Very, very good answer. If we try to ask it the same question, but by changing the format, let's say to explain this text using Q and A format, let's see if okay, let's see the answer here. If we can see that it's saying again, it is one of the checks performed by DCDIAG utility. It analyzes the health functionality of domain controllers. What does the test check? Okay, advertising status. What is checked under advertising status? Is current advertising ability to services, then client network add authentication, replication, and so net login. Why is net login service important for advertising? The net login service on each domain controller is crucial for creating the necessary SRV records in DNS. The advertising test checks the status of the service to ensure it's running properly. Again, this was said, but this answer is not that good. But I think the answer is very clear now, and it gives us examples. So, very, very good answer. Let's go and continue with Mr. Lo van der Poor answer or his video. So let's continue. Here we can see that records, for example, here this is on the, for example, the primary domain controller. There is a service record. So this indicates that this server is an LDAP server. We can see service location. So to know if this server is an LDAP, the client need to go to the DNS and check if there is a service record for this server or LDAP service record for this server. The server record is used to map the name of the service, in this case the LDAP service, to the DNS computer name of the server that offers the service. So it will link the name of the computer to the name of the service. So now the client, if he is asking for a LDAP server, he will go and check the DNS, and DNS will provide him with the server that have the service name attached to. In a Windows Server network, LDAP resource record locates a domain controller. So this is if I need to locate a domain controller, I need to ask the DNS, and then the DNS will check the server, the domain controller, and the service attached to this domain controller. Let's see how much time we have passed. So we have about 1 hour. Okay, let's go and continue working with the, where is it? There it is. Okay, just wait for a moment. So just revising here, we can see that very simple. So the advertising, if these records are not there, the advertising will fail. Okay, so now we can see here is the net login service. If it is not working, then a lot of problems, users will not be able to log into the domain. Okay, so this is and the advertising of the services will fail. Okay, so this is one thing also. Let's see if we can see also. Let me go and see here the description. If you go there and see the services dot here, this is the service console. There is the net login. Here you can see it says maintains a secure channel between this computer and the domain controller for authenticating users and services. If the services stop, the computer may not authenticate users and the services uh, and the services, and the domain controller cannot register DNS records if this service is disabled. Any service that explicitly depend on it will fail. So this is simple. It will not be able to secure the communication between the computer and the domain controller. It will not be able to log in the users, okay, to the domain. All of the services the domain controller is publishing will not appear, or it will fail to advertise. So very simple explanation. So if there is problems on the domain controller, for example login, you need to make sure that the net login service is running, okay, and it will run automatically, by the way. So now this is the different tests that will be run using okay, so as you can see here, we have discussed the advertising service. Some of the tests are related to the replication, so this is why we need to focus on the Active Directory database structure, because some of these tests are related to the replication of these database partition. Check, see if there is any file replication system failing replication of the sysvol. Again, there is another thing here we need to focus on. Not only the databases are replicated, but the sysvol folder. The sysvol folder is very important folder that contains all of the group policies that are created in the domain, and contains some very important files that need to be shared between all of the domain controllers, and they should be identical. So for example, if one group policy is not replicated within the sysvol folder to another sysvol folder, so for example we have on every domain controller a sysvol folder. If one group policy in one sysvol folder is not the same on the other sysvol folder, so some will have some group policies applied and other not. Anyway, we will see the replication of the sysvol folder, and we will see Mr. Lovandpour saying or discussing this. And there is check the file replication system. So these two are related to the replication. Let's go and continue. So he's saying if this is not working, net login service had stopped or failed to start. Here we can see that one question again, that the replication, okay, there is two things replicated: the Active Directory database and the sysvol folder. Okay, the Active Directory database is replicated using certain services and protocols, and the sysvol folder is replicated using certain services or protocols. Before or during Windows Server 2000 until Windows Server 2012 R2, the replication of the sysvol folder was done using the FRS or File Replication Service. From Windows Server 2016, the replication of the sysvol folder is done using the DFS or Distributed File System or Distributed File System Replication. Okay, so again, one question I asked the AI before. Let me show you, because I have asked it a little bit of a thing. What are the services and protocols used to replicate AD database and sysvol folder. Okay, let's see this question. Okay, we can ask it to explain it in layman terms, but here we can see it giving us some of the most important services and protocols to replicate the database. He's saying that knowledge consistency checker, this server generates the replication topology for the AD. It ensures that all domain controllers are aware of the replication passes and schedules. Not the protocol itself, but utilize the underlying replication mechanism. Let me ask it to explain, just a moment, explain in layman terms, explain to be more simple in layman's terms. So here, so this is a good answer. Here, let's see the answer of ChatGPT for all. Here it's saying that replicating here these are, but here it doesn't say if this is a protocol or a service. Okay, remote procedure. Okay, here it is discussing these, but let me do something here. Add to the explanation if this is a service or protocol. So this is a good answer. Let's read it loudly.
Sure. Let's enhance the explanation by specifying whether each element is a service or a protocol. Replicating the AD database, Knowledge Consistency Checker, KCC. What it does. Imagine you have multiple copies of the same book in different libraries. The KCC is like a librarian who ensures that all libraries know where the other copies of the book are and when to check for updates. Why it's important. It helps keep the information in sync across all libraries. Type 2. Directory Replication Agent. What it does. This is like the postal service that carries packages, in this case updates and changes between different libraries. Why it's important. It ensures that any changes made in one library get delivered to the other libraries. 3. Remote Procedure Call, RPC. What it does. Think of RPC as the delivery trucks used by the Postal Service to carry those packages. Why it's important. It allows the information to be transported from one place to another efficiently. Type Protocol. 4. Intersite Messaging, ISM. What it does. This is like the airmail service used to send packages between cities or countries. It's used when libraries are far apart. Why it's important. It ensures long-distance updates are delivered reliably. Type Replicating the sysvol folder. 1. File Replication Service, FRS. What it does. In older systems, FRS is like an older delivery system that ensures copies of important documents and scripts are available in every library. Why it's important. It keeps critical documents synchronized across libraries. 2. Distributed File System Replication, DFSR. What it does. In newer systems, DFSR is like a modern, faster, and more reliable delivery system for those same documents. Why it's important. It ensures that the latest versions of important documents are available in every library more efficiently. Type, service, key points. AD Database Replication. KCC ensures everyone knows where the copies are. DRA, Postal Service, carries updates between libraries. Trucks, transports updates efficiently. Protocol, ISM, airmail, used for long-distance updates. Service Vol Folder Replication. FRS, Old Delivery System, keeps documents synchronized in older systems. DFSR, Modern Delivery System, does the same but more efficiently in newer systems. Why it's important. If these replication services and protocols aren't working correctly, it's like some libraries not getting the latest updates or missing important documents. This can lead to confusion, outdated information, and problems with accessing shared resources. Keeping everything synchronized ensures that everyone has the correct and most up-to-date information, no matter which library, server they visit.
Okay, let me ask something. Add to the explanation, the terminology, the terminology for the add to the terminology. Okay, let's see what it will do. Okay, so now we can see that every answer it will get the real term. Okay, so we can see, let me show you what I mean here. Okay, so here is giving us an analogy or an example, and then this is the uh, uh, real thing. So let me just wait for a moment and I will show you what I mean here. Okay, so if you go further, for example, okay, refresh. Okay, let's go and see here. Where is the terminology? Okay, for example, let me show you what I mean here. For example, here this is an example or analogy, and then what is important, and this is uh, what is really do. It generates the replication topology for the AD. Okay, this is the replication topology. Okay, so this is one thing to know. If the replication here saying direct replication agent within the ADDS responsible for managing directory data replication. Okay, so this is related to the directory data replication or the replication of the database. So this service is related to the replication of the database. This is related for the topology of the domain controllers, how the replication will go from the nearest to the farthest and so on. So okay, and then we can see the remote procedure call used to replicate or to for replication traffic in the Active Directory. So this is very good answer. We can see that it gives us the terminology used to transfer data between DCs in different sites, often using RPC or SMTP. So this is a good thing, an example to make it more simple to understand why it is important and the real terminology or the real thing here. Okay, so very good. We can see here they were used in older Windows version to replicate. Okay, so very good answer. So we can now know how the replication is done. Okay, now it is done using some services and some protocols. Okay, so very good answer. Let's go and continue our video. So again, one thing here, this is the explanation uh, of the different Active Directory partitions. Okay, it acts like a drawer. Partitions is like a drawer in a large cabinet. Okay, now he's explaining one by one. So you can see here, maybe for our example, matrix.internal, this will be our domain partition. configuration and schema and application. We don't have any application. For example, some of the applications may be an Exchange or Microsoft Teams. So this is one of the things also. So here how we can access these partitions, okay? If you need to access or to see these database partitions, we can access them from Windows tools. Let me show you all how we can access it. So we can go to the control panel. There is two ways you can access the schema partition, and to ask we can ask or we can access the schema partition and access the database. So first of all, need to connect. We have a couple of things here. We have the configuration, so we can access the configuration, which will give us the partitions or list the partitions of the Active Directory, or we can access the schema, which will go to the schema partition of the Active Directory. So configuration will list all of the database of the Active Directory. We will see that in a moment. And the schema, you can play with the schema database from this tool. So now we can go to the configuration, okay, and tell him okay. If we go there, so here, for example, he's accessing the schema database, but here I am trying to access not the schema, I'm trying to access the whole database. Okay, so let's see, or let me show you all what will be uh, the thing here. If we go to configuration and okay, now if we open this one and then open configuration, we will see here is the partitions or the Active Directory partitions. Here we go, if we open it, we will see the partitions or all of the partitions of the Active Directory. Okay, not this one. So we will add the partitions here. Then we can see here is our Active Directory database partitions. Now this is the matrix or matrix.internal, which is our domain partition. Then we have the schema partition, we have the configuration partition, we have the last two, which are the application partition. So this is one thing also to note. So this is one thing, we can access different Active Directory partitions. Okay, there is another free utility. You can through it access the Active Directory databases, okay, or the Active Directory database. We will see that in the upcoming videos. Okay, I think this is the naming or the database. I think this is not the database, but you can access the attributes of the database. Okay, we will see here another thing I forgot to say. The schema partition and the configuration partition should be the same in all of the forests. Okay, in all of the forests, which means in all of the domains and subdomains. As for the application and domain partition, it should be the same in the same domain. Okay, so for example, matrix.internal and the application should be the same in all of the domain controllers within that domain. So for example, I have Linux. If I have linux.matrix.internal, then the domain partition and the application partition can be different from the matrix.internal. So what we mean here, this is forest application wide. It should be the same on all of the domain controllers, in all of the forest, in all of the domains and subdomains. This is related to the domain itself, so it will be replicated within the same domain. If you have subdomains, these two partitions will be replicated within the same domain or within the same subdomain, or then with the same, or the domain controllers within the same domain or within the same subdomain. So this is one thing also to take note. So here we need to continue. I will stop at a little bit of a point here, but Let me go further because I need to stop at some test. So we will stop at what point? Here, this is some of the applications that can be uh, here or that will be recorded in this partition. The Microsoft Teams, the Exchange, and I think I don't know what is this application exactly. But okay, we can access the AI later and ask it what is this application. Here you see there is a fifth partition, schema directory partition, also known as read-only partition, used in the forest to have multiple domain controllers. Anyway, so we will see here is the sysvol folder. This store group policy objects, replication of GPOs, login scripts. Just a moment, guys. So let's continue, guys. Here we can see that another part of the replication is the replication of the sysvol folder, which is a shared folder created when you promote the server to be a domain controller and install the Active Directory. This will be shared automatically. It will contain all of the group policies applied to the domain. It will contain all the login scripts, especially the Active Directory login scripts that are applied to the domain. uh, it will contain some administrative templates. Remember that we have done the group policy center store location and put it in the sysvol folder. This also will be replicated. So we can see this folder is very, very critical. All of the group policies are stored in this folder. All of the login scripts of the Active Directory are stored in this folder. All of the administrative or group policy administrative templates are saved to this folder. If this folder is not consistent on all of the domain controllers, some group policies will not be applied, some login scripts will not be applied, some group policy templates will not be available. So this is very, very critical, and this is replicated using the DFRS or distributed file replication system. It was before 2012 R2, it was using, or it was replicated using file replication system. So let's see. I will stop at one or stop at a certain time, but let's see first. We can continue. Here we can see this is the replication service. As we can see here, this is the one related to the replication, enables you to synchronize folders on multiple servers across local or LWAN, or this is the DFS. This is the service name. So it is responsible for replicating the sysvol folder on Windows Server 2016 and up. Okay, so here we can see he is saying that what we have said, it was the AD was replicating the sysvol folder using the FRS since Windows 2000, and it was introduced, the DFRS was introduced in 2008, but currently all of the replication is done using the DFRS. FRS is not no longer used anymore. Okay. See here, we will stop at this here. This is one also of the tests that will be done using the DCDIAG tool. I will stop at this minute 27:01. We will continue discussing the different tests for the DCDIAG tool. Hope this video was informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.